start, I'd like to welcome everyone to the October 7th work session of the Raymore City Council. This is one of those, Chris, the mayor's not here tonight, and Councilmember Berenson called me as I was leaving the house. He said that he was not feeling well and would not be in attendance, but I am glad that the rest of you are. There are some of the most exciting topics on the work session tonight that I've seen in quite some time. And I can tell you from the pre-briefing I got from staff, two things. Staff has done some incredible way above the bar work, and they have some very good and exciting news for us tonight. Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, sir. The first topic on the agenda tonight is some work that staff has been doing and relative to widening I-49 and improvements to the bridge over I-49 at 58 Highway. A lot of background work, a lot of detail work has gone into this, proving once again that we have incredible staff. They have stayed after this like a hunting dog. And the reason we're bringing it to you all tonight is because it's becoming, as Mr. Kraft put it, very real. We're hearing positive things back from the powers that be. So you all know we have met with, from here, we have met with Councilmember Townsend, who is obviously on the MARC transportation committees, and the mayor. We have now met with the city of Belton as a Cass County partner in this for some of the grants that we're going to be putting in for that we're going to be talking to you about here in a minute. For some of those, we feel like the county's going to have to be the spearhead on that with all of the cities that have a vested interest. But when we submit the build grant to the feds that we'll tell you about, it should probably be coming from the figurehead of the county with all of us underneath that umbrella. So we've met with them. We have met with Senator Blunt's office. We have met with Senator Hawley's office. We have met with Congresswoman Hartzler's office, and we have spoken with the governor's office up to the governor's chief of staff. So a lot of moving parts here. With that, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Rokos to kind of give you all an outline, and I'm going to limit myself to being the paper passer out of here.
On the, excuse me, we have been working on two projects. We started off working on the I-49 from basically Jackson County down to North Cass to get a third lane built. And then the second project is working on Route 58 over I-49. Both these projects are important and need to be constructed. And then on the front of the sheet, you can see they're both very expensive projects. The widening of I-49 is $34.5 million, while the widening of Route 58 is another $30 million to get across the interstate to make it the way we want it, which makes a total project over $64 million to get all this work done. As you're familiar with it, as we've met with people, I always explain why do we need this project. I don't think I need to explain to this group why we need to have these two projects. But as I always tell people, this is a freight route. It is, MoDOT calls it a Tier 1 freight route, so it's an important freight route going through not just Missouri, but going through the country to get freight to different places. There's also a lot of accidents, fatal accidents, accidents where people are seriously injured along this stretch, and MoDOT has recognized it. So it's on its highest severity list. And we also know that as the area grows between Raymore, Belton, and northern Cass County, the congestion is only going to get worse and worse and worse. And it hurts any opportunity we have for economic development, and then it also affects environmental and social needs that we have in the community. So we started working on this project, and just to give you a little history, I-49 has been on the list of Missouri's future projects for many, many years. It's always been identified. It's been identified at MARC every time we do a long-range outlook, and we're in the long-range outlook again. It's in the 2040 plan. That's the current active long-range transportation plan. It's going to be identified in the 2050 plan, in the long-range transportation plan. The only problem is it can't make it onto the STIP. That's a statewide transportation improvement plan. It has a hard time getting to that next level. MoDOT's emphasis on building roadways has switched to maintaining the system, so they consider this an expansion project, So expansion projects really don't get funded these days. They really want to do projects that maintain the system. If it were on MoDOT's long-range plan and on its STIP, this project would be an 80-20 job, meaning 80% would be federal funds and 20% would be MoDOT's gas tax fund or the gas tax that the state has. So it would be 80-20 and there'd be no local funds involved. Since we can't get over the hurdle to get on the STIP, the job doesn't get funded. It just remains on the plan as unfunded every time we look at it. So Raymore and Belton has tried to get the project funded through the local MPO MARC, Mid-America Regional Council, but that project doesn't rate well there either because once again, it's an expansion project and it's outside, I'd call it the urban core. Anything that's outside 435 does not score the best because they're interested in jobs in the inner city. It helps people without transportation, looking at multimodal, bike, and those types of projects. But even if we did manage to get it funded, and trust me, we've never given up the struggle, it would be at 60% to 70% at most. Most jobs that we get funded through MARC is about 60% funded. So that leaves 30 to 40% that would be a local match to those dollars. MARC also does not have enough money to fund this in one cycle, so we'd have to do it over 3 cycles, maybe 4 cycles. A cycle is 2 years, so you're looking at 8 years to get all the money put together and then to start building, constructing the job. So you're still looking at potentially 10 years out from where you're at.
And during each of those years, of course, all of the funding from MARC would be going to this future project, so we'd be very, very popular with the other cities that
Yes.
are involved in that particular system.
Also with MARC, the local jurisdictions are also responsible for 100% of the cost of the design and usually the right-of-way too. So those are added costs on top of it. So if you look at it, you're almost at 50% of the cost of this project is what the local jurisdiction would do going through them. MoDOT started a program called the cost share program. They say, yes, we'll build a program. It's no problem at all. The only problem or the opportunity for them is that you have a chance to give them 50% of the money. And so their cost share is 50%. And so once again, you're back to the same spot saying, I've got to find $32 million, which I don't think any one of us has. And so the governor came out with a program this last year for governor's cost share out of the general fund. And so he proposed it, and it got passed by the General Assembly for 1 year, and it's for $50 million, and it's going to be parsed out over different projects. And it's, once again, 50-50 for construction, unless it has economic development. If you can show economic development, it can go up to 100%. And so those are the different programs that are out there. I put a bullet in there that says I-49 is a federal highway or a federal interstate, and it was built by the federal government with almost all federal funds at the time. And so that's why we met with all our federal representatives in Washington to try to do it. They all recommended a build grant. A build grant, they used to have earmarks. And earmarks is you talk to your local congressman, and they would help you get money, and that would show that they're bringing back money to their district. And so they would write into the bill saying, I want to have so much money to go to this project, and then it would be considered above the line so it wouldn't affect MARC's funding. And then you'd get that money, you'd have to make a small match to it, and you could build your project. It was a way for them to bring money home and a way to get things done. Well, that's gone. They went to Tiger grants. That's the previous administration. Now it's called a build grant. And the build grants are up to $26 million, and it's been that way for several years. I've researched it. No one's ever gotten $26 million. And only people get $25 million. So I don't know why they say it's 26, but that's just the way it is. And so the build grant is something when we talk to every one of these representatives, whether it's a senator or the representative, governor's office, they all know this location because they've all gotten stuck in it. We held the first, go ahead.
Mike refers to it as, instead of the 7 levels of Kevin Bacon, it's the 7 levels of I-49, because every person we've talked to has been like, oh yeah, when Senator Blunt flies into Kansas City, he's got to get down to Springfield. He's constantly getting caught in that. Everybody knows about this problem.
We held our first meeting at 4:30, so the people who were coming got stuck on the way down. Then there's an accident on the way out, they got stuck. So they got stuck both ways. They got to spend about 2 to 3 hours in it. So if they didn't know about it beforehand, they know about it now. And so so we have met with everybody, and they recommend this build grant. The build grant is basically a piece of a bigger project. We were looking at first at just doing either the 3 lanes or the bridge, but when I studied the Bella Vista bypass, and that's down at the Arkansas-Missouri state line, they used it as a portion of the program. When you look at the Broadway Bridge or Buck O'Neill Bridge, they're using their build grant as a portion of a bigger project. And so it was recommended to me to make this a bigger project. So that's why I put the two of them together. That's why you now see Route 58 and I-49, both those projects together. So it's a bigger project. And so we met with MoDOT, and their recommendation is do a cost share. And so we can take that $25 million that we could get through a build grant, cost share it with MoDOT, and that would be our portion, and that would come up with $50 million of the $64 million we need to build the job. So it'd get us a significant way down the road. That leaves the $14 million balance. The $14 million balance, I've been working with the governor's office on the governor's grant program. We turned in last Tuesday, we turned in for the governor's cost share program. And in that cost share program, I turned in for a minimum of $7 million to do the 50%, but I actually put in a total explanation of why we should get the $14 million, because it's the economic growth. And so I took the numbers from the Van Trust Development, and I put it all in there saying, here's how many jobs are going to be created, here's the total investment of the building, the land, the roads, and I added it in there. I also added in that the city of Raymore, along with the city of Belton, has put in a lot of money. It's almost $18 million to build the interchange, the roads connecting to there. And that doesn't even talk about the utilities that were brought there and all the other work. So I went through a long discussion of here's how many jobs can be created, here's the investment the local communities made in this project, and now we just need this extra bit from you to help out. So if we can get the build grant, we can do the cost share. If I can get this last piece, we can make a big project here and make a large development in the area. And so those are the type, when you look at the bottom, that's kind of the model that we're at. We're at that remaining piece of that $14 million to make the job go through. And then the last sheet, when you flip it over, it's a different looking picture. MoDOT came up with, I think it was 4 different options of how you could build the interchange. And all of them are done to maximize their dollar amount, you might want to put it a nice way. I prefer to build something actually that maximizes economic development and maximizes the ability for us to grow. This is what they call a SPUI. It's an urban interchange, and it's a single point. So if you look in the middle, there's one spot in the middle instead of having the 2 ramps have signals. So all the left turns come to the middle, then the right turns turn off to the side. The outer roads are pushed just a little further out. The ones that are in Belton on the west side are where Belton already has a job planned to do that. We'd have to make a slight change on the east side to go through and make a slight adjustment there. But those, with that change, MoDOT likes to have 1,000 feet between intersections. That would put 1,000 feet to the west and 900 feet to the east. And it'd actually make it where there's only 3 signals from the bridge all the way to Dean. I mean, including Dean. So you're into town. And all of a sudden, the turn, it'd be 3 through lanes in either direction, 2 turn lanes to the north, left turn lanes, 1 left turn lane to the south, and be a 9-lane bridge. And this would all fit within that budget that you see there.
Any technical questions for Mr. Rokos?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rokos, for the very detailed report back on these 2 projects here. Just one question. Where's, on the map that you have in front of us, where is the Raymore city limits?
Raymore city limits?
Yes.
It's off the chart.
Exactly. And Mr. Eakey, in our community conversations and surveys that we've had, what has been some of the main concerns that they would ask for us to work on in our city?
If you're looking at traffic specifically, it was I-49 and 58 Highway.
Outstanding. 2 points I wanted to bring out on these particular projects is staff has taken considerable effort in response to the citizens' concerns around on a particular stretch of road that is not within our city limits, and coming up with ways to do this economically and do it from a cost share perspective with all levels of government to try to make this thing work. And I applaud staff's efforts for taking the lead with respect to this project, being that it's outside of our wheelhouse, and we could have certainly asked the other communities that this is within the city to do. But given the skill set and the professionalism that we have in-house that's been proven time and time again, this is another illustration of that, that we are willing to go above and beyond to help the citizens, not only of our particular community, but everyone around us to benefit from it. So again, I applaud this, and as it's been said before, as I sat in on the very same meetings you all sat in on with the different government officials and their staffs, yes, it's been time and time again repeated that this is a huge area of concern. And for me personally, when I ran for office for this seat, that was one of my concerns, was transportation and infrastructure. To see not necessarily shovel in the ground or a check being written, but to see it come to this point in the short time that I've been on council is very encouraging, and I applaud staff's efforts to get it to this far in the process. Thank you.
To a person, the senators' offices, the Congress people's offices are all willing to sign letters of support when we submit the build grant, which is the next step. The county has accepted the idea that it would be submitted by the county to them as the figureheads. We have spoken with Belton, Mr. Crass, Mr. Rokos, and their counterpart over in Belton would actually do the heavy lifting as far as writing the grant is concerned. They know the language. The Senator Blunt's office, I believe, was very helpful in the levels of the letters of support. In essence, it would be both the senators would co-sign their letter of support. The advantage of having Senator Blunt on board fully with this is Senator Blunt is on all three of the Senate Transportation Committees. He's also on the Appropriations Committee, and this thing can pass through the first rank, but you got to get Appropriations on board. So having him there and in heavy support of this is great. The governor's office has been very supportive and have made overtures that the governor is probably going to want to come out and look at the problem firsthand. So we have submitted, at their request, we have submitted a request for a governor's visit to the area. And we'll keep you all obviously very informed of that one. The next step is going to be to get Councilmember Townsend, the mayor, and the mayors and city managers from Harrisonville, Peculiar, us, and Belton all together around the table to discuss those, in the county, all around the table to discuss the submittal of the build grant and get the city manager sign off for the technical team that's going to be moving forward with that. We hope to get that meeting scheduled prior to midweek next week. But because this thing is all of a sudden starting to take on a life of its own, we wanted to inform the council as soon as we could. Any questions?
Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Rokos, excellent presentation. Commend you and Mr. Crass and your staff and everybody and all their hard work on this. I just have one question. If you had the money right now, what's the biggest hurdle then in the next step to make this happen?
Well, the next step would be, if you had the money, is getting with MoDOT and looking at doing a design build project and getting it out the door. That's the hurdle. Then that person is going to have to design it and then come up with any changes of right of way they want. And the biggest thing has to be done first is get the environmental clearance. And so once that's done, the project can be started.
We, if this comes to be, at some point, all checks go to MoDOT, and then it becomes their project, and that's going to be that point in time where a project that had its birth in these two gentlemen's office, then the cities and everybody just have to step back and let MoDOT do the job that MoDOT is there to do, and we'll have to all be very careful to check our egos at the door at that point in time.
Mr. Townsend?
One last question. With these two projects and the upcoming RTP 50 prioritization workshop, how would these fare in that, you spoke to earlier, the prioritization within MARC. Is this going to be these projects a topic of discussion at that?
It's one of those, we've kind of thrown Mark a curveball with these projects when we submitted them. They don't score very well, as we've talked about, but of the 300 comments Mark got for these projects when they put it out, over 200 of them were directly related to these projects. Kind of overwhelmed Mark's staff to the point where they called Greg and said, "Whatever you're doing, stop doing it," and we had to inform them. There were two Facebook posts. That's all, and generated some comment. So we'll continue to push, but as Greg said, anything outside the 435 loop doesn't fit into the current narrative, doesn't fit into the current prioritization of their projects.
With that comment, and given their title, not to belabor this discussion, what can be done to change that? Would this be a project to force a change in that sentiment?
I think Mark is struggling, because they actually came in, the two representatives came and met with us last week, talk about their programming and how they see things happening, and how they should re-look at prioritizing roads, because one of the things, and Greg touched on, taking care of the system. Well, we pushed them, what is the system, and at the present time, anything down to a local collector has qualified for funding. Well, our counter to that was, you really need to be looking at the arterials, the major arterial, that's the system. Local roads shouldn't, and so maybe over time there will be a paradigm shift towards looking at and redefining what the system is.
Because I had planned on attending that workshop just to be able to see the process and see how this was being discussed and prioritized in that session. So thank you for the comments.
One thing I had, kudos, Mr. Rokos, Mr. Krass, this is fantastic stuff. One of the things that I've spoken about since the time I've been on council was not what we are doing now, but what our vision for the future is, what is important to our people. And this is the second major project that we have undertaken, both in terms of transportation, that have been outside of our city, but incredibly important to our citizens. Not only will this improve the transportation network, but the economic development possibilities are off the chart because of this. This was already a hot area. It's going to get even better when we improve the infrastructure through here. And I hear what you're saying about Mark. Part of their dilemma is all of their funding in any form comes from the federal government. And when you have two senators and a sitting governor pressing them on this project, even though it didn't score within their current matrix, they have to take notice of that. And a lot of this, I know, was started with a simple question from Mr. Holly's staff to you, Mr. Rokos, and you saw the opportunity to say, as a matter of fact, there is something you can do for us. And it kind of snowballed from there. So, Mr. Feuerborn, again, we're seeing another example of your staff, various departments, taking on challenges that we once thought were pipe dreams 5, 10, 20 years down the road, now becoming reality and really improving the lives of our citizens. Thanks. Anyone else? I think we're ready for Hawk Ridge Park erosion control issue, sir.
Over the course of the past 3 to 4 weeks, it has become really obvious that the rains are causing some significant damage to the new landscaping and the way we did things at Hawk Ridge Park. Specifically, the bowl for the amphitheater, we seed it, it rains and rains and rains, and all that seed is going down and all that dirt is going down, and we could have a potential MDC issue because that erosion control, or that erosion is all sliding into the lake. Tonight, I would like to ask for the council's okay to bring, we'd like to sod the bowl because that's the worst area, and then actually do hydro seeding in the other areas where we think the erosion is not as bad, but it is present, to get that seed to come up quicker than the efforts that we're currently undertaking. It would be a $60,000 venture, but would like to bring that. If I don't get objection, I would like to bring both the budget amendment, and we actually put out for emergency quotes to get this work done and get something done up there to get us out of a concern situation that the MDC may come in and cite us for the erosion that's going on there. It's just, who would know we would have 7 Saturdays in a row of pouring rain, and it just, we can't get it to establish.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Would I assume correctly in thinking that the packet would have a extensive explanation of what hydro seeding is?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the funding would come out of stormwater.
That's what I was going to ask. Thank you.
We have, I mean, it's a logical extension of that, and we have very, very good fund balance in there to cover it.
So are you just looking for a consensus on that tonight, Mr.
I
Freeborn?
was, if no one objects, we would just be bringing it to you next week on the agenda.
Mr. Barber.
I don't object. I'm just curious, if we sodded the whole thing, would that be too much to swallow? I mean, is that something we could at least look at, or have you already looked at that and I don't feel comfortable bringing it to us, or?
Mr. Mustine, could you come up to a microphone, if you don't mind? Would the amount be bigger than a breadbasket?
Repeat the question just to clarify for me, sir.
We're talking about doing the bowl in sod and then hydro seeding the rest of it. What would we look at if we know sod is better,
Yes.
and we'd like to have be able to use it this next spring? What would it cost to do the whole thing
The
in
whole
sod?
park?
Well, whatever.
Or just the amphitheater
part.
area?
The amphitheater part.
I believe when we talked to those, the gentlemen, they ballparked us anywhere from 140 to 150,000 to do that area. But it's a broad span. When you look at the amphitheater and you go peripheral, there's a lot of area there that we're hydroseeding. We could, if the council would like, get more specific on that if you want us to, but we stuck with the bowl or the area that was previously matted as part of the contract.
I have a question. So obviously there's the cost of the sod. Typically with sod requires immediate water treatment.
Yes.
For some time, usually a 2 to 3 week period or more if you don't get help from Mother Nature. But knowing our luck, we would put it in and the rains will stop for the rest of the year. But what is our plan for watering that? We're going to bring a water truck in?
Part of this particular quote includes general grading, pulling the mat that's there, doing some general grading, putting the sod down, watering for a couple weeks if needed, and it's 3 weeks, okay. And then the rest of it is the timing of the winter months. It goes dormant, and at that point we let it sit until the spring rains, and hopefully they're adequate and not overpowering and washing it down.
I'm very much in support of this. It's needed. I don't see anybody shaking any heads. Have any questions or problems with this? Anybody? I think we're good, Mr. Fairbairn.
Would you like us to bring the option to get a price?
What do you guys think? I think you look at it. I mean, sometimes when you're something of this scale, it may be, and they're kind of getting in their slower time of the year too, so we could look at it. We can always say, no, you know, we want to do the initial part.
Mr. Townsend?
With that process, whichever option we go with, what does our program look like for the first event that would possibly use that? Would it be, I'm not a horticulturalist, but a gardener, but would it have been germinated enough to support traffic?
If you're talking about the hydro seed,
Yes.
how quick does that hydro seed come up, Nate?
Hydro seeding is just really a seeding program on steroids. I mean, it's gonna come up, but it will take a full growing season of hydro seed to establish and not be trampled down and tore up by shoes and stuff. Sod will obviously, you know, take root a lot faster and be more durable with foot traffic. But I would say a good spring growing season, so a late summer programming season would be good with hydro seeded.
Given that information and the fact that you said that the stormwater fund was healthy, I would be in favor of hearing both options.
Very good. We can do that.
I think we're ready for the next one, which is no tax increase GO bond issue, sir.
Thank you, sir. Staff is seeking the wishes of the city council on proceeding with the initial steps to look at a no tax increase general obligation bond issue in April of 2020. The filing deadline for such an issuance, or for such a ballot measure, is Tuesday, January 28th, 2020. Election day is Tuesday, April 7th, 2020. Right now, not current projections, if we were to go for a no tax increase general bond issue right now, we could ask for authority for over $23 million. To put that into perspective, in 2006, we asked for authority for $14 million. So we're growing. If the council wishes to give preliminary consideration for such an issuance, staff would propose the following timeline. The work sessions on November 4, November 18, staff brings potential projects and cost information in front of the council for your considerations. At the work session on December 2nd, the council could finalize those projects. That would give us 4 reading sessions for that particular issuance, because it would take 2 readings of the ordinances. If the council will remember, depending on the type of project, is the bond issue alley that it goes into. If we have parks projects, that's one bond issuance. If we have streets, that's another bond issuance. The other types of infrastructure that you may wish to see on there. But readings on December 9th and 23rd would allow us to then file for the issue right after the beginning of the year and begin the marketing campaign. You can actually ask for the authorization, say up to $23 million, but you do not have to draw down the funds. Remember the 3-year arbitrage window where you have to spend at least 85% of the money within 3 years. And if you have a rising interest rate environment where the interest rate you're paying on the bonds is actually less than the interest rate that you're garnering in the bank, you have to give that excess interest back. We don't want to be in that sort of a position. You never want to be in an arbitrage situation anyway. But that clock does not start ticking till you would actually draw the funds. So let's say that we had $6 million in park projects that you wanted to put on first so that everybody saw the flash before all of the infrastructure. We could draw down the $6 million, clock starts ticking on those. As soon as we get those done, or while we're doing those, we draw down other funds as necessary when we're ready to begin the projects. the previous vote was 86% in favor of the bond issue. The important part about getting to this one is to be able to tell the voters that we kept our promise with that one. By April of 2020, the TB Hanna project will be complete and all bond issue projects will be done. So we will be able to say we kept our promise. And then some, because nearly every single one of those projects, especially the parks projects, were actually more than what we told the voters we were going to be doing. We supplemented a lot of those funds. Hawk Ridge Park's a perfect example. So tonight, no discussion about projects, just wanted to see if the council wants to proceed with this particular time frame, and if you have a desire to, at least on a preliminary basis, begin consideration of an April 2020 bond issue.
I apologize. I should have started off with a caveat. As much as it pains one as a child to think about Christmas, you want to talk about the presents that you're going to get. That's not the subject of our topic tonight, although that will be here soon enough should the council decide that this is a worthwhile project. A couple of things to think about. Mr. Fearborn's hit on a couple of them. We were running somewhere around that $10 to $12 million about every 12 years. We have had such phenomenal growth and a rise in our valuation. It's allowed us to see numbers that we were previously thought were unheard of. Also, I think everyone here at the table would agree the 4 road projects that we've done and the 4 parks projects have been incredibly popular with our citizens. It's a no tax bond increase, and actually if we don't do this, we lose a little bit of ability to spend money on the credit card, as Mr. Moorhead used to put it, I believe. So some things to think about. You can kind of dream about the Christmas presents tonight and what projects might be you might want to be considering. Staff's going to certainly give us a slate of projects much like they did last time. I thought last time, those of you that were here, that the process was fantastic. I thought we came up with an incredible slate, and I think that shows from the citizen satisfaction that we've seen. And the only things that I've heard are like things about the rack. Why didn't you make it bigger? Well, we may have an opportunity here to do that kind of thing. So I, for one, am certainly in support of this and moving forward with it. Anyone have any other comments, questions, anything? Looks like where it goes, sir.
Thank you very much.
And we're ready for the November 4th work session, which is going to be a very important one, I understand.
Thank you, sir. On November 4th, we would like to ask for the council's indulgence in a joint meeting with the TIF Commission and with the Planning and Zoning Commission to have 80 Advantage come in and give what is in essence, a nationally recognized program for volunteers and elected officials, ED 101. It's a 2.5, 2 hours and 45-minute program. So we'd ask, they have no problem with people eating while they're presenting, so we would propose that we start that particular meeting at 6 p.m. and serve everybody their dinner and have them do their presentation. Just kind of a general agenda is definitions that are associated with economic development. You've all heard Matt always talked about the 3 legs of the stool. That's kind of changing now. There's the traditional 3 legs of the stool that we think about, but there are new 3 legs of the stool to be considered. Basics on economic development strategic plans. It is a very good presentation. We think you all will find great value in it, but we wanted to see if you all are okay with the 6 o'clock start time, and dinner on that particular evening. We'll get back with you on that one.
Sonia, I know the 6 p.m. occasionally has been a tough start, but fair enough. All right.
That's why we thought we'd give a month advance notice on this one.
You never know. We get a lot of presentations from different vendors and groups and consultants. I remember the one, I don't remember the group that gave it to us, but when we were considering the parks projects part of the GEO bond, that was fantastic. If this is even half of what that was, this would be well worth the time spent.
I think you'll enjoy it. I really do.
And it's in a topic, economic development, that's forefront with all of us and with all of our citizens as well.
And maybe we'll have an economic development director in attendance at that particular item. We completed those interviews today, just on a side note. So, okay, thank you.
And our last one, except other, is the current budget discussions we're in.
Does the council have anything for the fiscal year 2020 budget?
That looks like a no to me, sir.
Then the budget as it stood with the single amendment that was proposed for the PubWorks app will be being presented to you this month. Also remember this month, in addition to the budget amendments that we talked about here, we're going to be bringing the usual slate of October budget amendments that are necessary for cleanup purposes at both of those meetings as well.
It also, the increase from 0.5% to 1% on the salary, correct?
That will be reflected in
That's
that.
in there as well. Okay. Thank you. And we do not have any reason for executive session tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. Does anybody have any others?
Mr. Townsend does, it looks like.
Quick question. I had the opportunity to drive through the Willow Wind parking lot, and by surprise, it was a smooth ride. Just curious if that was any, or what can be spoken to. Was that based on own initiative, or was that a result of the actions from the 5-year inspection plan?
It was the actions of the 5-year inspection plan and the threat of citing.
Outstanding. Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to kind of jump on that. It seems like we have every parking lot in Raymore getting replaced at this time. Is that the sign of the economy? Is that people spending money before the end of the year? Has it just worked out that way? Is it our harsh winters? It's just interesting that I see that almost there's like a half a dozen getting replaced right at the same time.
I think it's a Willow Wind. We know why. Price Chopper was actually on the classic, or Cosentino's Center. They are very good about their maintenance, and the parking lot should last 15 years before it needs a good parking lot should last 15 years before it needs a 2-inch mill and overlay. And that's exactly what they're doing over there. That is if you are doing appropriate maintenance on it. If you're doing the crack sealing, which is the number one thing, and they did crack sealing on the 5-year intervals, and then at the 10-year interval, they actually did the fog seal, the slurry seal over the entire parking lot. So they're at the 15-year mark now, and they're doing exactly what they should be doing. Some of the others, I would imagine it's asphalt prices are down a little bit. And I know way too much about this topic because in my other life, I was dumb enough to volunteer to be the chairperson of the parking lot committee for my church, and we're actually putting one in now. But I was 15 when that parking lot went in, and it had no maintenance done on it. So, yeah, it's getting beyond its useful life. We'll just put it that way. It's a gravel pit at this point. But I think the rest of them, it's just kind of a coincidence.
I do have one other thing under other. I just want to say when I came onto council, which is probably something all you could relate to with the possible exception of Dale because he's been here and then left and then came back. When I first came on, I wasn't sure what to expect, what we would accomplish, if anything, if this is something that would fit for me, if I would like it. I can tell you, having gone through the process of the GEO bond, the community conversations, and then seeing these things come to light now makes me feel like I made at least a small difference, and we are continuing to move forward at light speed because of the hard work and the professionalism of our staff. I am proud to be here with every one of you at the table and with all 100 or 100 plus of our employees, sir. This is great news tonight, and what a fantastic work session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Circa.
Just one comment. I did have a conversation, there was with Mr. Hale Sr., just a short conversation about the deal, and he said that he was very excited to get the parking lot in, that he had had some turmoil with his other partners in the past who rejected doing all that, but then since he separated from them, it was a great thing. He said now he's on his own, he wanted to get that done, he's very happy to do so.
If no one has anything else under other, I believe we're adjourned, sir. Thank you.